if anyone's ever been up north in, you know, the Michigan area, Canadian wilderness, or even here in an area like Tennessee, you know that food in the winter is really hard to find. The animals disappear, the food disappears, the foliage disappears, okay? But that's not, you know, Mother Nature leaves us a little bit of treat here and there. And it's important to know where to find that little bit of sustenance. And one way to do that, you know, I've showed you, is finding berries under the ground, like wintergreen berries, and finding partridge berries, okay? But berries aren't going to provide us with everything we need. Now, when it comes to modern survival, fruits and berries and nuts and plants and things can be all you need. You don't need to go kill some source of meat out there to survive in most modern survival scenarios, because modern survival is way different than primitive living. Okay, modern survival means you're probably going to be in a 3 to 4 day scenario, maybe less, maybe a little more. Your body can go 2 weeks without food. Most people aren't in them scenarios for more than 2 weeks. Now, it's good to know how to get that source of meat if you need it in the long term, but it's more important to know how to sustain yourself for 3 days so it's not so mind-bearing on you to make a mistake, you know, because you're a little hungry. This year happens to be a really good year for nuts. In any modern survival scenario, that's a plus. Now, primitive living is where you are in the wilderness and living in the wilderness, and this would be a staple for you. The Cherokees, the Chickasaws, the Shawnees, this was a staple food for them. The acorn, the black walnut, the hickory nut, all of them were staple foods for them. Alright? And it's important for you to understand that, being someone to want to learn modern survival and just love being in the woods, because if you're in the woods a lot, it means you have that risk. And you should understand which nuts are there and what they look like and how to identify them, and which ones are poisonous. There's some that you can't eat, you know, like the Ohio buckeye. Might not be in your neck of the woods, but you need to know that you can't eat it. You know, there's chestnuts in certain areas and they're delicious, but they look crazy in their husk with all them spines. If you didn't know it, you might not think it's a nut. You might think it's just a big burr. So it's important to study nuts. The reason being it's important to study nuts is this. Fruits, like I mentioned earlier, only offer us 300 to 400 calories per pound. That's more than your vegetables and your plants and stuff out here that you're going to eat. Plants are 100 to 200 calories per pound. That's a lot of gathering just to get 400 calories, let alone plants, a lot of gathering to get 200 calories. But nuts offer us almost the same amount as meat. Okay? Fat is 3,500 calories per pound. Meat is 1,500 calories per pound. Nuts are 2,500 calories per pound. Okay? Now, yeah, it's not a big game meat, and you're not going to get pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds of it, but you run into a patch of forest, a hardwood forest that's covered in nut trees, you'll get your fair share of nuts. Okay? And what you want to do is look for these types right here. Okay? First one we have is a black walnut. Okay, now I dehusk these, and that's alright because you've seen the husks. They're green. I have them in other videos and you can see what they look like. But this is a black walnut. A little bit tougher to open. Okay, not very easy to open up. You got to have some big rocks and smash them, and you're not going to have that much yielding inside. Okay, they're good, they're delicious, and you can eat them as is. That's a plus. So now let's go over to the acorn. This is a big acorn here. You can see I got a handful. Let me get the other ones out of there. You can find a pile of these from large to small all over. Okay, acorns are great, especially if you find a white oak. White oak, you can actually probably get away with eating a few of them out of the hand. They're not quite as bitter, but most of them have so much tannin in them that they're really bitter, so you'd have to leach. You'd have to find some water where you can put these in a t-shirt or some type of material like that, where you can mash them up and let them leach in the water. And that means letting the water run past them after you've taken them out of the husk here like this. Okay, you need to remove them from this shell, and then you'll smash them up, and you can make bread with these. You can do all sorts of things, but you got to leach them first. Okay, so there's acorns. And then we also have hickory nuts. Okay, there's plenty of hickories here floating around this woodland area. Alright, I'm going to take you, I dehusk this as well, but I'm going to take you and show you what it looks like in the husk with this. But here's a typical hickory nut. Okay, so if you're walking around and you start finding a bunch of pieces like this, it means you've probably found where squirrels have been eating some hickory. Okay, and then we look here and we find one that's left. Okay, and that's what they look like in their husk. They have like an X running through them, and you just simply pop them sections off, and there's that same nut I showed you a minute ago. Okay, now the squirrels might have left this one because it was rotten. They can tell. So you have to be sure that you don't have a rotten nut. You don't want to be eating that. They don't taste good and probably not too good for you at the time. So try to make sure you got some good ones. Where there's one, there's more, and you can find them. Just walk around, look for hickories. But there you have it on hickory identification, what they look like in the husk and what they look like dehusked. And you can see right next to me here, we have this bark formation like this. Okay, now your shell bark and your shag bark hickories look like this. Okay, 2,500 calories per pound is a huge score. Okay, now a lot of people will tell you won't survive on nuts and berries. Well, you probably won't in a primitive survival or primitive living scenario. If you're living out in the middle of the wilderness, you need to find a source of food that's much greater than finding nuts and berries. Okay, now you don't need as much food as you think you do. We live in a society today where we eat a lot of food. You don't need as much as you think, so you'd get used to it. But in modern survival, this is the best way to take the edge off at 2,500 calories per pound. Fruits, 300 to 400. Okay, that's not that much. It's not going to do you very good unless you pick hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of berries. Okay, but that's a lot of berries to be picking.